to a very, very, very special Let's Chat. You're probably wondering, where the heck am I? Where's the cute Pokemon? Where's the shiny neon sign? It's all gone because I'm now at Twitch HQ for a special Let's Chat with a live studio audience. We're breaking the barriers at Twitch and going beyond the chat room and into the live interactive spaces that we all stand for. I am Jay. I also go by Kawaii Guy across the internet. I'm the director of community at Twitch, as well as a broadcaster for the past 20 years in the space. And as you all note, and I get lots of comparisons to John Oliver, the grade does come in faster every single day. But I'm very excited to have two amazing people with me today on today's Let's Chat, and I'd love to have y'all introduce yourselves. Let's start with the wonderful Angie Noel.
Hi, Halito Chokma. I am an Indigenous streamer on the platform. I'm a part of the Twitch Women's Guild and the Latin Guild, and I'm the co-founder of the Indigenous Alliance on Twitch. I'm excited to be in this conversation, and I can't wait to kind of get more of my story and more of what I do on the platform and my journey through gaming.
I love it. I love it. And I will note, Angie has given me so much grief about their rider because I did not have Voss water ready for them on arrival. I will fix that.
Or the pink starburst.
The pink starburst were not present. I will fix that next time. But we're joined by an amazing ambassador as well. Meg, introduce yourself.
I think I need to leave the stage because of the pink starburst information I just learned.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm betrayed. I feel really sorry for
I am sorry we don't have stock in starburst yet, but we're working on it, okay? But
it's an urgent matter.
It's an urgent matter, chat. We got to get starburst up in this.
Just
It
take
is.
notes.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you. My name is MegKaylee. I'm one of this year's new Twitch ambassadors. Thank you. I think one of the coolest perks of being a new Twitch ambassador is every time you say it, a bunch of people cheer and you just feel really happy, which is so nice. But I wear a lot of different hats. I do Twitch streaming, of course, obviously, and then I also do on-camera hosting and freelance production work. So sometimes writing scripts about video games and reading them out from a teleprompter, sometimes interviewing a game developer, sometimes running off a cliff in Red Dead Redemption 2, adding another horse to the death counter that I unfortunately have because I can't drive in that game. So that's me.
Amazing. Well, obviously, we're very excited to have the two of you here with us today to have this conversation as we dive in. And it's a very, very important month right now that we are celebrating, filled with amazing creators across the service. And I'd love to dive in first on the importance of Indigenous heritage, especially for this month in particular, because as we were chatting earlier, the education I received as a kid is completely wrong. It is not historical, it doesn't map, and there's a lot of effort that we can make in the space when it comes to both educating ourselves and as we move forward. But if more than anything, I want to see the uplifting of Indigenous creators across the service, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your journeys and sort of some of the work that we're planning forward this month ahead.
Yeah, so it is Native American Indigenous Heritage Month, which started off as like a day and then a week and then went to a month. And we have been trying to get, more representation of the month to Twitch and stuff. So we created the Indigenous Alliance on Twitch to also showcase kind of a grassroots movement for a guild, as we've seen the positive impact that we've seen from the Women's Guild and the Latin Guild. I speak on those because that's what I'm a part of, and so those communities have been. It's very it's a different experience when you get to be in community with, and you share an underlining identity, and so as Indigenous people, we're always invisible, we're forgotten, just like you talked about, education is a huge component that creates those barriers. So we're known as something else or Indigenous creature, whoever's putting the headliner out there. And so it's something that is passionate for me, because it's who I am. It's just that's where I come from. That's all I know. So trying to get others to understand that, and it's been great. This, summit has been amazing. Everybody's like just understanding more, and that's what we want, is you to just listen and to learn. And if you have questions, if we have that energy, we can educate each other, and also do your own education. There's a ton of Indigenous resources that are coming out from Indigenous people. So I always say it's always been about us without us. So now we are getting into the position where we get to write our own books, cast our own movies, create our own guilds or stream teams. There's stream teams that are all Indigenous, and so it's just kind of creating that space for us, but also working with Twitch and how can you uplift us?
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that this conversation is happening.
No, absolutely. And this is the thing, is when it comes to there's hundreds of oppressions and systemic issues that have been ingrained in societies across the history of time. And when it comes to change, it comes through the connected, coordinated, beat by beat moments that we can construct together. And some of the movement, like we announced recently with our Unity Guilds blog announcement, that we launched 3 additional shelves to celebrate individuals with disability, our Indigenous creators on the service, as well as veterans. And there's a lot of intersectionality, to the point of what you were saying when it comes to the guilds that you're a part of and the efforts that, obviously, as Twitch looks forward, we want to find ways to uplift and champion any identities across the board through coordinated efforts, and start to open those doors and get those seats at the table as we progress forward. What I'm very curious to, and I'll actually toss this over to Meg, is what are some of the things you hope to see in the future for marginalized creators on the service, or how can Twitch continue to push forward in that direction?
I love that. I think having features year-round, which y'all already do, feels really great, because Pride Month is a great month to celebrate that, but I'm a lesbian year-round. That doesn't change once Pride Month ends, and so, yeah. And so I think getting to work with Twitch and feeling cared about year-round for that piece of me and celebrated for that piece of me is really wonderful. And I think in the future, I would just like to see more and more of us rising to the top. Not because we want to overtake other people, but because we deserve to be there just as much as they do.
Yeah, there's actually a good point that you just said there, and I've addressed it on previous shows. Sometimes you'll hear individuals say, so-and-so is stealing my viewership. They were never your viewers to begin with. They were not yours. And there's no ownership element when it comes to, obviously, even you spending time with us in the chat. So I really like this idea of, as we move forward, obviously we have a lot of Together For campaigns that operate year-round, and we want to ensure that after Pride Month, we don't go back in the closet, as to your point. And so one of the things that Twitch has been doing on our front, you see this across when it comes to our programming at TwitchCon, a lot of the stuff that's being uplifted to the front page, is productions created by individuals from these identity-based backgrounds and from their personal experience. So rather than Twitch creating it, it is the creators who are being pushed forward into the front and in the spotlight and given that chance to take the stage. There was actually a comparison back when I was working on the partnerships team, that a person had said to me, what do you think is cooler, the school dance with the chaperone or the house party? And I'm like, well, the house party is the one I want to be at. And so the house party are the creations that you all do, Twitch chat. It's the creations that y'all do. And so how do we uplift those moments so you can have that voice go forward? We were actually talking before the show about Scorsese and the path that he had taken. And I'm just curious your thoughts, if you wanted to expand on sort of what he did there when it came to, he could have exemplified and just owned it, but instead he invited a much greater populace to the table to tell the story that needed to be told.
Yeah, so Martin Scorsese went to the community and worked with the community on the perspective of, Molly and Lily Gladstone being, Molly kind of showed the indigenous lens. And so it was a different perspective. And so it really took that movie to a different through a different journey, because you're not usually seeing those perspectives. Like I said, it's always about us without us, and so kind of championing and uplifting the community and working with the community too. So as we were discussing, it's, you know, when you work with tribal and indigenous communities, you really have to build relationships. It's all about relationships. And you can't just go and like expect to just get something from them. You need to really, you know, build those relationships. We are not all the same. We have different, governments and the ways that our tribes are, how they're conducted and everything like that. So I don't think people understand that. I mean, there's over 570 federally recognized within the United States. And that doesn't include, you know, our Canada relatives and our relatives in Mexico and throughout, you know, the world in general. And so it's really important to understand that we're not all the same. But the way that our education system, the way that our society portrays us is that we're all the same. And so it's the same as the Latin America experience too, because I also am, you know, when we talk, you said intersectionality. Well, yes, that's, you know, my identity is, I am 3 tribal nations as well as Mexican. And so it's like very complex. Our identity, you know, is moving parts. And I'm also, you know, a queer, I'm neurodivergent. Like when you just start adding more identities, then, you know, it's like feeling represented in these different areas is really important. So you have that connection.
It's very tough for the general entertainment industry, I think. A lot of people like to think in a homogenous nature and just saying, it's this way or it's that way. It's this or it's that. And unfortunately, or actually, I would say rather fortunately, we are more complex than that as individuals. To your point, there are many aspects to our histories, to our culture that we bring with us each and every day, which makes us unique. And oftentimes you'll hear broadcasters talk about authenticity, showing up as your truest self. And that is a key aspect that we carry with us every single day. But we want to be cautious that people only think of us in that direction. So I was chatting with some folks outside and with the folks here about sometimes we only get the calls for Pride Month, or we only get the calls during Indigenous celebrations, or for women in gaming. It's usually just, oh, well, what's that experience like? And so I guess I'm curious, like your thoughts of like, how can we break down that barrier in the industry to view us as the individual and the passions of which we love versus just identity? So
I really like that question. You ask very good questions.
Thank
they
you.
They make you want to just sit here and think for a second, but we can't do that because
It's live.
it's live, so we gotta
it's
keep
live
going.
and chat
Oh.
is literally in the name, so we need to chat. Gosh, I think I would say that I'm really needing to think. I'm stuck.
It's a tough one because
Yeah.
we've navigated for years where that is the standard.
Yeah,
We get the
exactly.
calls during Black History Month. We get the calls
Yeah.
during Women's History Month. And then, okay, well, I checked the box, or I changed the icon on a Twitter
Exactly.
handle.
Like, I wish that there was kind of an easy go-to answer of like, I think if we just did this, it would fix it. But I don't think that's the case, unfortunately. I think that, unfortunately, we're fighting this uphill battle where there are people that just view us that way of like, okay, that's my list of people I go to for Pride Month or for XYZ event, and that's not just what we exist for, and that's not the only thing we have to express. And I think that by continuing to express ourselves loudly and in ways that we can that are in our own control, we can just continue showcasing those pieces of ourselves to where like those catch their attention. And I think continuing to celebrate these parts of ourselves year round and not just as a part of specific months or specific celebrations, I think would really help too.
I think maybe like having a showcase every month, so that way it is, represented all the time and not during, the heritage months. So it kind of shows that we're still here, like as Indigenous people. Also, we're still here. We're, not historically gone. We're survivors and we're resilient and adaptable. So I think just showcasing every month that you have these marginalized populations on the platform could really, be highlighted more.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I've noticed this across the board with some of the creators that I've coached over time, is typically, marginalized creators, because it's not part of the homogenous understanding of what a gamer is, and there's a gamer trope that oftentimes is pushed out into the ecosystem or associated with other types of content creation, that it can become hard to break through that mold. And what you're proposing of having regular ingestion, not just targeted, isolated ingestion, is a means to start to push culture into the understanding of, yes, I game for game's sake. Yes, I love to read that book. Yes, I love to perform this music, and I am who I am, not just what you visualize me to be in this given moment. So I really like that, like, going forward. Is there a piece of content, like we talked, is it Killers of the Flower Moon is the title of the Scorsese film? Yeah. And so what are some other pieces of content that you think are pushing us in that direction? Or are there broadcasters that you've witnessed that are like, oh, they're really taking ownership of the stages that they're given online when it comes to Twitch or beyond?
I have an immediate answer to that, and the answer is one of my best friends, Little Siha.
Oh, yeah.
What she's done with Just Dance is incredible because it goes so far beyond just the game itself. She became a coach in the game just from starting off streaming it, and created a stream team that's raised thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for a number of charities and a lot of money for St. Jude. And I think it's just amazing because no one else has paved that path, and we can get so stuck in our own journeys feeling like, well, if I try this, like, I don't know if that'll work because no one else has done that. And it might just be that you're meant to be the first person to pave that path. And she's someone I really look to when I am afraid to do something that no one else has done, because I'm like, well, she does things no one else has done and kills it, and I can do it too.
I think me being on the stage right now, having the conversation, I'm looking at, the chat, and I see the Latin Guild, the Women's Guild, the Indigenous Alliance, shout out, to those creators. Like, I see, they see me, and so I am the representation right now, and so a lot, but I am like paving the path, and I am an auntie also. I was an auntie, started being one at the age of 7, and so I'm sure my nieces and nephews, a couple of them are in chat, and so they see auntie up here. My children, they don't watch Twitch, so they're more of a YouTube, just videos. So, but yeah, I am paving the path for this whole Twitch stuff. And that's what I advocate too, because I see Indigenous creators on TikTok and all of that stuff. And so as we were, having that conversation, it's like, we need to bring that cultural and stuff to Twitch. I mean, that's a way to get more representation of the Indigenous people and our culture out there and communities. So, yeah, I got some big shoes on right now.
No, here's the thing, is wear the shoes with pride, because I know that your family is cheering on you from home. All the fellow creators out there who have ever felt like we're kind of in the back of the line or against the wall, we are now setting opportunities to push us forward and put us in that spotlight. And it comes from a coordinated effort. And know that I know they're proud of you. I know this live audience is proud of you for being up here as well. So you're making great movement. Now, when we talk about like further expansion in the space, as to your point we were just raising about like TikTok creators, there's a great base of creators coming from outside services, and this is something I tell to all broadcasters and all the viewers at home that are watching, is that the creative ecosystem, it will always be rotational through a variety of applications. There will always be another video app service, social networking service. I mean, heck, Blue Sky just got 15 million people, from what I understand, to sign up and move over from X. So that will always be evolving in our ecosystem. And I'm curious from your thoughts, for both of you, how do you reach communities most effectively on those outside services on social media to bring them into your live environment, like how we're having this live conversation now?
I think that's another really great question. And my answer would be to just immerse yourself in those communities. You become a part of them, and then they naturally are interested in you and what you're doing because they relate to you. I think being able to relate to people is such a superpower. That was a takeaway that I got from a therapy session once, that I was just like, yeah, relating to people is a superpower because it's not something that everybody can do, and it can be really hard to do if we don't entirely understand someone's perspective. But when you can relate to someone, it can just be such an amazing source for so much in terms of content. And so, yeah, I think that would be my answer for that.
As I've been so I'm a part-time random streamer. I started on the platform in 2018, just as a just side fun thing, and I still do it as a side fun thing, but it's more with passion now. But I am now adding more of my career to it because I'm trying to use my platform to advocate for the communities that I'm a part of. And so I've been even showcasing on LinkedIn, that's more of my career area, but it's telling them hey, I do this Twitch stuff or whatever. And so it's that intersection of bringing different platforms and having that advocacy work just kind of connect everywhere, because I have communities on Instagram that are different than ones on Twitter and now Blueski, and so it's you got different audiences, and so you can kind of intersect it, and depending on what kind of conversation you're trying to have throughout the different platforms.
So obviously, we're talking about a ton of different platforms there, and I know when I was a full-time creator, the hardest thing was all those platforms were constantly telling me, you got to post 6 times here, you got to do 5 times here, you got to do this, and then on top of that, I got to do a 3-hour live stream, and then I got to produce VODs. It's not sustainable as a creative to do all of those elements. How do you prioritize your time to make the most impact towards the causes of which you believe in when it comes to those services?
I think probably some of the best advice I was given early on in my journey was quality over quantity. And it can be so hard, especially when things are so fast-paced with social media. We see new trends, we want to try everything, and then you can feel almost this FOMO of oh, I wasn't quick enough to hop on, this thing that's happening, and now I'm going to miss out on this opportunity. But really, if you missed out on it, that just meant that there was something else that you were meant to focus on. And so you just redirect it to another idea, and you can always go back and try something again if you didn't get the opportunity to before. And so pacing yourself and really managing your energy efficiently pays off in the quality of your content, and better quality content is going to resonate better with people. It's not even always about making, sometimes it's about absorbing. When you're in these communities, you are just seeing the things they're talking about, and they are giving you information. Here's what you make content about. And so sometimes it's just taking in stuff and then learning from it.
I think I just stopped caring. The whole, you said, the 6 posts a day or whatever, you'll get content when you get content, because I am, doing a lot of different moving parts in the work that I do. I keep, even conversations here, I tell people what I do, and they're like, wait, didn't you just say you do this? You were adding another title. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's but it all intersects, the work that I do with the positions I have. They all kind of intersect, and they're all chunks, contract work here and there, and so it's not all of my time, and so it kind of just, I pace it out, and lots of try to do self-care and stuff. So I post when I can, and it's what I can do. That's all I can do, and I tried to stop worrying about trying to be the top creator, because I feel like everyone tries to do that in this space, and I've had to learn over time though, that it's like you said, quality over quantity. So the community that shows up, they show up, and I'd rather, even during my research and all of that stuff, quantitative research, I get it sometimes, but I'm not about that. I'm more about quality.
Yes.
Qualitative research. So that's what I prefer.
I love what you both are saying here. Now, when it comes to creating in general, and as you're highlighting these things of not caring, I think of like Brene Brown obviously talks about this in a lot of their speeches and in their books of not paying attention to the critics out there and what they're telling you to do, and ultimately staying guided on a mission. There's a story that actually Jimmy Iovine, who was the co-founder of Beats by Dre, once said when they were like, "Oh, are you trying to compete with this market or this market?" He's like, "No, I don't care." And he's like, "It's because we're all effectively, if you want to do a comparison, horses in a race." And the reason why they put blinders on the horses, because if they look to the left or right, they're going to stumble and they're not going to meet the goal. So you just have to kind of run at your goal to achieve it. Now, that sounds good in practice, and Jimmy was a very successful, very lucky individual. But something we were talking about earlier is not every person will have the posture of you just happen to be in a studio one day and you're producing for John Lennon. Some people don't have that access. Some people don't have that education. So when you're talking about professional skill transfer, some people are entering into our space without that. So I guess when it comes to that aspect, and I know the guilds are doing amazing work right now when it comes to mentorship programs and working with young women in STEM and like trying to reach out and support communities and build people up with education, what do you think are the most immediate challenges or things that we should think about to assist with communities that you care about most to get them better poised for a future that is heavily technology based?
So I come from like a lot of student programming and higher education experience in my career, and so I always have a passion for students and like the navigation of the educational systems for them. And so I think for the communities I come from, for them to get into these degrees that you talked about, or these positions that you talked about, they need those degrees. But the educational institutions weren't, built with our like populations in mind. And so it's about uplifting those students. I mean, I work with a lot of, student-focused organizations. And so it's like trying to uplift them, provide them with resources and support. Because the whole like, if you can do it, I can do, or you can do it, I can do it kind of thing, mentality. I get that, but other people may have different access and privilege and all of that stuff than I do. So I got to figure out where are my resources, what is my support, what does that look like for me? And so I think it's really important to, if you see students and, you have, somebody that you can link them to in the career area that they want to be in. I mean, I think that's really important for them to kind of get that mentorship, and that way they can get into those positions. I mean, there's less, when you talk about tech, there's less than 1% of Indigenous people with those degrees. Most of them are associate's degrees. So anything above that, they don't have those degrees. And, a lot of positions require, bachelor's or above that. And so, yeah, I think just uplifting students.
Yeah, so calling attention, obviously, to the issues that are permeating throughout different groups. I referenced this with the collective over the past few days. There's a great documentary called Street Gang, which is about the formation of Children's Television Workshop, which created Sesame Street, ultimately to solve educational issues that were happening out of New York City. And that expanded globally over time. So it's through coordinated efforts where we start to think about what are these pocket communities. Is it access to the tech? Is it education around the tech? Is it education around safety when it comes to young women that observe like popular TikTokers or popular Twitch streamers and like, I want to emulate that, but they're not aware of the challenges they'll face. It's allowing ourselves to enter into conversations with those individuals. What do you think, Meg, when it comes to challenges?
Yeah, I think the stuff that you both covered was so important and incredible. I think there's so much to be said too, just about how we feel about ourselves, and there can be so much to be found just in being able to empower each other, especially when it comes to pieces of our identity that we've been made to feel are not good or that we shouldn't express. And I think even just by providing that to people that in different marginalized communities, we can really help to just get them in a place where it's like, yeah, we can express these pieces of ourselves and we can do so loudly. And I think there's such a beauty to that too.
Can I just piggyback off of that a little bit? Because I want to say, like, my experience of Twitch before, like, using, like, my identities or, like, really leaning into it. I mean, I was just a streamer just playing video games, right? And although I was a part of communities, they were predominantly like they didn't look like me, and so finding little pockets in those communities that did, and making friendships and connections with them, and of course the broader community making connections. But whenever I got into more of the guilds and like the Indigenous lines, it created like a space of comfort because, like I said, we all share a common, denominator. And so it's like, it's nice to learn from each other too, because, we're not all the same and we all have different experiences. And then, we learn and try to figure out how do we uplift each other in what we do.
When we're talking about community, obviously you mentioned this aspect of comfort that comes with any place that we feel safe in. What are some other elements of community that you look for or that you hope more communities will implement over time?
I love humor and just not being afraid to let out your childishness. I think as adults, we can get really stuck in this, like, oh, we have to be an adult and we have to be like stiff and boring and we can't like laugh at silly things. And it's like, no, you can, and you can have fun. And leaning into that makes life just more fun. Why not?
Mm-hmm. I love the concept of humor because there are like common balances of humor that unite across all humanity. I mean, there's the term, I think it's like Schadenfreude, like when somebody slips and falls. Typically we laugh and smile, and that's an aggressive thing, but people do it. But when we're thinking about like further types of humor can also extend to other types of movements. Like humor can be interpreted as comedy, anger, sadness. It's any collective emotion of which we are experiencing at a given point in time, and being able to lean on a community to amplify that emotion and feel together, allow yourself to process it, is something that honestly everybody should be able to do. There's a lot of oppressive tactics that say, no, men can't cry, for example, is one that was heard for many years, or you have to act in certain ways. We all are emotional beings, and allowing ourselves to express when we need to is necessary for us to then progress past it, because if you repress the emotions and they get bottled down, you end up, typically with like, sometimes we get the trolls and stuff like that.
Turns out they don't actually disappear when you do that.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't disappear whatsoever. Now looking positively towards the future of things that will make, or what you hope the greater industry will become over time. What are some things you would hope to see in the greater creative industry for your groups that you work with?
Well, I'm just going to say more representation, obviously. So that way people can feel like that communities that I come from, that, we all kind of share the lack of accessibility to some of these positions, that we can see representation and feel like, oh yeah, like there's hope for me. Like there's obviously, they achieved this goal, and so how do I get there? So I'm just gonna say more representation.
Well said.
That's a great answer. That was going to be my answer too. But I think I would also say as well, in addition to that, more inclusion when it comes to things being created that are stories of representation. Have people that are being represented there to provide input. If you're telling a story about Black lives, there should be Black lives present, giving you input on what you're creating in that moment. I think that's really important, and I think that's where sometimes we see creative projects get stuck, is like wanting to have that inclusivity piece, but they don't have the right voices there to be providing that lens, and that lens is so crucial. So have these groups there with you, giving input.
Turns out it's very easy to spot when a film written about a woman was written by a man.
Oh yeah,
it's very easy to
video
spot.
games too.
Yeah.
Like, and we were talking about being women in the gaming space, and kind of how we cannot use voice comms. How it's just it takes a lot of energy to deal with the toxicity that comes into the gaming space, and so it can be a lot of it takes a lot of energy to get through it.
Does that experience of ultimately you're reaching out to have a moment of play, and they're like, I want to play this game. Does the toxicity detract you from wanting to experience that type of environment moving forward? Or do you get that sort of like fire underneath you of like, oh, you really want to start something? I'm going to dive in harder. Like, what does that toxicity do? Does it push you away, or does it make you say, no, I want to fight harder against this?
I mean, I play Valorant, so if anyone knows about Riot Games, League of Legends, or Valorant, it's not. That's. I say if you talk to people that play these games, they're always going to be like, yeah, I have a toxic relationship with it. Like, it's a love-hate thing. Because I love the game. You know, the abilities, the characters are really cool. And it's about the energy that I have that day. Am I gonna, like, sometimes I may throw something back, or sometimes I'm just like, I'm done with this today, and I'll just mute. But then it just like affects the game because it's a team game. So it kind of just depends on how I feel that day.
It's a good awareness of self, of how much energy do I have to put into the movement. And that's the thing is, especially when it comes to those of you out there in chat who are activists or pushing for cultural change, we can't be 110% every single day. It's not possible, it's not sustainable, and it's the same thing when it comes to broadcasters. When broadcasters are doing 8 to 10 hour shows a day, as I said on previous shows, there's no other industry where there's a host on stage talking into a mic for that length of time. It's potentially damaging over time, so being mindful of the energy that you have, where you currently are mentally, is the project of which you're pushing forward or what you're trying to do actually progressing you in a positive direction, and mindful of your audience, respectful of your audience. And some of those elements do translate into our personal lives. Like we're saying, it's just like if you had a hard day at work and you don't have, like, sometimes people talk about spoon theory. I don't have the spoons to do a show tonight. It's probably better for you not to give a half-baked performance and just save the energy, refuel, and give a better show the next night. At least in my perspective, but I don't know. What do you think, Meg?
I completely agree, and I feel like that was a lesson I really had to learn the hard way. I loved that you brought up energy levels because I feel like it's such an important discussion and something where so many of us just keep pushing ourselves past our limits and then throw our hands up and we're like, why am I so exhausted and like miserable all the time? And it's like, because we're not listening to our bodies when they're saying, I'm tired and I can't right now. And so learning to listen to what you need and recognizing that sometimes it doesn't always mean the same thing as what you want, and recognizing that sometimes you might just have to be like, I wish that I could do a show right now, but physically I can't. Emotionally, I can't. In whatever capacity I can't, and that's okay. And giving yourself that permission rather than having that mental voice of shame that's like, well, just do it anyway. And it's being able to identify that and kind of stop that in the process. It's a hard thing to do, but being able to build that skill is very life-changing, I think, and can really affect your content positively.
So I was going to mention a book that I read, Rest is Resistance. And it, really opened up my eyes about like how taking that self-care component of resting and napping. It was all about napping too. But we live in a grind cultural, like we're, just work. And so I think really trying to understand what does that self-care look like for you. And really taking care of yourselves so that way you can take care of the others around you that you need to take care of.
You hit on a neat element there with the concept of grind culture. And we have to think of where does that stem from and who is sending that message. Typically associated capitalism, pushes just do more for someone's reward with the hopes of eventual aspiration of personal reward. But oftentimes there's another benefit. So being very mindful to not fall into the traps as broadcasters of the concept of the grind. Oh, I have to keep grinding. I have to keep doing it. You can achieve the same levels of personal success with more segmented content. Like I see a lot of people do, for example, constant subathons or individuals going for like partnership. I'm going to do the partnership grind. But then by the time they achieve partnership, they're too tired to continue, because they push themselves too hard. And so how do you navigate, I guess, professionally, how much you push out there, or like when it comes to your scheduling, you're very mindful towards your schedule, but Meg, how do you think about your scheduling when it comes to what you're producing and sending out?
I think something that helps a lot is, well, firstly, the capitalism thing, reminding myself that like I'm rebelling against a system that I don't agree with by resting. That's helped me so much with being able to better practice self-care and give myself rest, but it's hard to really, I had a thought and it ran away from me.
No, well, when it comes
It's
to
gonna come
like
back, I know
your
it.
broadcasting schedule, how do you treat that for yourself? What's your current broadcasting schedule, by the way?
Oh, yeah. So usually I stream 4 days a week, and then I kind of will judge my spoons.
Yeah.
Sort of see where I'm at energy-wise, and do I physically feel like I can stream today? And that's a hard thing to do, but it's been something that I've been working on.
Now, when you first started broadcasting, was it 4 days a week, or did you build up to it, or did you pull back?
No, when I first started streaming, I was working part-time at GameStop as a seasonal hire. I was in college, and I also was streaming like 5 days a week. And I was trying to push myself to do more than that because I was so obsessed with it, I wanted to do more. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where that comes in of like what I want to do does not align with what's actually reasonable for me to do in this moment. And it's tough. And I think there's something to really be said about the element of mystery. When you're giving someone the content that they want 24/7, they know that it's always there. But when there's like an element of suspense and surprise and mystery, and it's something they have to look forward to or anticipate, that makes the moment where it shows up that much more of a bang. And it's kind of like what we were saying about quality over quantity. If you have more time to do things on the back end, sometimes I might not have the spoons to be social, but I might have the spoons to sit at my desk and like stare at Sony Vegas for many hours editing something. And so it's kind of like assessing your resources, recognizing that sometimes it may vary too. Like sometimes I might have different spoons in different areas. How can I lean into that, and how can I authentically support myself in the process, even if it's uncomfortable for me to do so?
I really like what you were breaking down there, in that us as broadcasters, and for anybody who's broadcasting out there in the chat, we are the producer, the host, the performer if you're doing a musical act, the marketer, the editor, you name it. It keeps building and it keeps growing, the list of tasks that you have to handle on your side. And sometimes, to your point, it's better to spend those 3 hours on a marketing strategy for yourself. Let's say you're broadcasting to a very small subset of viewers, which is still important. Having one person talking to you is incredibly valuable, in the same way that having the two of you up here with me is incredibly valuable to me. You chose to spend time with me today and sharing this, and I'm going to take part in that. And so when we're thinking through, as you push forward, I want our broadcasters to acknowledge that sometimes it's worth it not broadcasting for a day to focus on, can I reach the audience of whom I'm hoping to find on other services, or just connect with people who are like minded, to the point about TikTok. It's not just beaconing all the time. Like when I think of the old Twitter experience for me, it's a lot of megaphoning, but not conversation. And so how can we like continue to encourage people to just go meet somebody, talk with somebody, network, pop in somebody's chat, be a participant, versus a megaphone for your personal business at times? I think that may end up proving more fruitful than just always doing the same broadcast over and over and over and hoping that it pops one day. There are components of luck to the business, and everybody's obviously hoping for that lucky hit, but there's better ways to approach it when it comes to our efforts.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to step back and look at the big picture, because we get so caught up in the day-to-day and we're like, well, this is my schedule. Like I'm supposed to stream. It's Tuesday. I always stream on Tuesday. And then we end up being in a place where it's like, well, next Tuesday we're really exhausted and we're like crying because we've overspent ourselves completely, and we're really struggling to sustain ourselves. And sometimes taking that night off means that in the grander scheme of things, you're going to be able to get closer and closer to the goals you want to achieve and not be miserable during the process. What's the point of getting to the goals that you wanted to achieve if you don't feel, you can't enjoy them fully, if you feel awful when you get there? So remembering that you're a human and not a machine is important. It's hard, but really important.
The machines will tell you the line has to always go up.
Yeah.
But I remember I was sitting with a very established director when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and he said to me something that was very important, and it really rings true, in that people will view you as only like, you're only as good as your last film that you've produced. So you have to just keep going and push past that mechanic. And also, let's say you hit 10, like your goal is 10,000 followers. Once you hit 10,000, you've now set a new goal for yourself of 100,000. and then it's just going to keep adding on. That never ends. So when we think of our purposes and what we're driving forward towards, I always encourage, get away from the viewer count, get away from the followership, and are you actually professionally developing yourself or just working on something personally that matters more to you? Like, I know there's some great co-working broadcasters, for example, and I took a period of time following a burnout of playing games where I was like, I can use my shows to continue my Japanese language education. And I can share that experience with my fans. So I'm actually developing myself personally, regardless of viewership. I'm still getting value out of it and finding those opportunities. So I encourage anybody out there to think about those for themselves.
I think it's like finding your why, and
Yes.
then how do you get there, and what are those steps? And I think like me going back to my why is like whenever I first started streaming, and it was like, you know, not really anything. I mean, I didn't even know what content creation was. But you know, whether you have one person in chat or two people, like it was just like we're, you know, hanging out and I'm playing a video game and you're chilling with me. And so I really had to take a step back and understand that like that's my why, and I just need to stop like caring about numbers. Like, you know, we said you stress yourself out when you do that. So I think just finding your why.
Beautiful. So yeah, we got some applause about that. There it is. Make sure you read it, chat. Start with why. Search it on the internet. Start with why. Simon Sinek. You'll be able to define that for yourself. So obviously, we have two amazing creatives here and across the industry, but I would love for you to talk about something that's coming up that you're excited about when it comes to either this month's shows or things to look forward to that people can tune into in the chat. I'll let you kick off.
So I don't know if you know, but it's Native American/Indigenous Heritage Month. And so we've had events going on this month, and right now we have a Native American Heritage Month raid train going on that was created by Connects, an Indigenous Alliance member. And so you can go and check that out. There's also a Indigi DBD tournament organized by Simply Aretha. And so that will feature Indigenous creators from various different communities. And then I do like with the Twitch Unity Guilds, I always do these Valorant tournaments. And so, like, you know, again, that's the game I love. And so we just kind of play around. We did one for Latine Heritage Month. And now we're doing one for Native American Heritage Month. So that will be on November 30th. But yeah, so definitely check out those events that are upcoming to support Native American Heritage Month.
Love it. Love it. Meg, what are you looking forward to?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm MegKaylee, and it's so many things ahead. I think probably the holiday season is what I'm most looking forward to at the moment. I don't have concrete plans right now for anything stream related, but I have some ideas floating around in my brain. So I'm excited to explore those. And I also recently got to participate in Steve Saylor's Dungeons and Disabled campaign at TwitchCon. He's been releasing the episodes, so I highly recommend you go check that out. So it was super fun.
Amazing. So, internet, make sure you follow these two amazing creators. My shows, they're so-so on Kawaii Guy. But I'll be diving back into my Pokemon adventures on my channel on /Kawaii Guy. But from those of us here at Twitch HQ, I want to say thank you for watching. Thank you to our guests again for joining us. And we will see you next time. Have a great today, even better tomorrow. We'll take care.